Act.
So far, he is correct. It is an action-packed game, not a boring draft from neither of these teams. So far, he's completely correct. But also, he's looking at that 3-0, and he got himself a good start to begin with.
Yeah, I think really interesting to hear from Zen. I think I had quite a long chat with both of the coaches before this series, and I think one of the most interesting things for me is actually some of the similarities that exist between the two of them, just as the individual styles. I know that Zen, kind of the way he described himself to me, I'm sure he won't mind me saying, he used to be a bit of a stickler for kind of playing it by the book. You know, work on your fundamentals, max out that, and then move on. You know, there's a time and a place for hard work. Not necessarily, he wasn't someone who was a big proponent of fun within a team environment. Obviously, on the contrast, Torek, very much about flexibility. Freedom grants the ability to improve for him. Zen very much in that similar style now. I know that he had a kind of a change mentality-wise to a more LPL kind of style of play, very high-octane aggression, flexibility in draft and things like this. And they both arrived at kind of a similar point in their genesis and development as coaches that is about freedom, is about allowing players to play what they want and just kind of giving that kind of, yeah, freedom is the best word.
We saw that on the first game. We saw the Elise.
Exactly.
That's freedom coming in. But also now you have that little nail on your head saying, I brought in the Elise. It didn't quite work out. I could have a win. And all of a sudden, how you believe the mentality is for both teams? Because Dusty did drop the ball, but they got it back. This is going to be kind of rough, but also for JDXL.
I hope that they don't let the fact that they won, you know, be the only reason they don't adapt draft. You know, some teams, they'll win and they'll just say, okay, this draft worked, let's stick with it, right? But I do think there's things that maybe they could adjust. Maybe they could get some more early game in the jungle. Because I do think this was XL's game to lose, and it wasn't really on Dusty winning. So I would prefer to see Zen actually adapt that draft more.
You were talking about Kreis. You were talking about the top lane, top lane, top lane. So might as well look into these two players right now to understand how the champion pool is.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about the champions they play. I feel like me starting off this point, I'm not going to get into depth here because I feel like this is very much Aragon's ballpark. This is his baby. But yeah, shared champions, there's actually not many. In terms of the unique champions you talked about that they played here, Curb just has so many curveballs. And one of the things in game one we were talking about on 4 is there going to be a curveball? Are we going to see something special here from Curb? But it was actually just the Gnar. One of the things for me is, are they going to... I feel like Dusty in this series going forward to E-Masters, they've almost got like the anime trope of the training weights on. How much do they need to take off at the moment? How much are they going to show us in terms of flexibility?
Interesting.
Realistically, they can just kind of revert back to playing normal.
Yeah, and I think as we might just carry on seeing normal and handshaking these meta picks. I don't know if we'll see any curveballs because both top laners, you know, they did well. Like maybe not Curb didn't do very well, but he survived the early game, which is the win condition. And then you had Kreis also getting really fed. So I feel like maybe they just handshake the same matchup again. Maybe they don't adapt. But you could see a lot of they both play the meta picks with like their own little flavors on the side.
Okay. Do you guys want to see how the chat has voted for the second game? Because on the first one was 80-20 in favor of the... How much?
98.
98 for Dusty. So you believe only 2% of the chat is still believing on JDXL. Let's look. Oh, wait, what?
Nice, guys.
That can't be real.
Dude, it's because all of the JDXL fans are in bed and they've woken up now.
Maybe that's it. A few fans have missed the first vote, and all of a sudden, 45, 55. I'm so confused right now.
I mean, it kind of makes sense, right? Because they did play well for the majority of that game. Outside of like Dan's early game, I feel like the rest of the players actually did pretty well. So maybe that's what chat's thinking about. But I think that game is such a mental tilter that I'd actually swing it the other way.
Chat, I have no idea what is going wrong with you guys as we toss it to the second champion select of the day. You didn't get an opportunity, so let's give it to Aragon.
Give it to me, man. Come on.
On the glass!
Am I not supposed to do it on the glass?
We gave it to him for
bad.
Let's look into the second champion select. So we got an Elise on the first one. What kind of surprises should we look into the bans? It should be the same bans?
So what's notable to me is that they actually haven't swapped sides as far as I'm aware. I don't think they have. And I think we'll just see the same bans. I think we'll see Rel banned here. And then what I'm noticing as the series develops is they're not actually going to the Yasuo, right? I really expected when Yasuo was open last lobby that they'd pick the Yasuo comp again, but they just aren't, right? So we're actually seeing, I think we'll just see the same bans. We're going to see Rel, Yuumi, and what was the last ban? We saw Twitch and then Zeri, I think. I think it'll be identical. There it is.
Yeah, pretty much the exact same drop being played out there. We'll see if it continues. I want to see what the B1 prio is for XL in this game, because we saw it in the previous game. It went in a different direction. We were expecting to maybe see a Wukong and Poppy that we've seen previously. They went for the Sivir, and I feel like Sivir was a champion that in theory worked out for them because it was able to, it should have been able to stall out the game.
Yeah.
but it wasn't really on. It was on to some other moving parts that the game didn't end up getting stored.
I think Sivir is definitely just a piece you can keep, right? Regardless of how last game went, I think he didn't do anything wrong. But yeah, we're actually seeing identical bans, the Renata, the Yumi coming out. It's
Sivir gets taken away.
Zeddy is available then.
So where does your priority shift now? Is my question in terms of the jungle pick, because you don't have the Sivir on the table that you wanted to revert to from the previous game. Do you take the Wukong here? Do you take the Zeri that's open on the table?
So I think potentially you could handcheck scaling bot lane. That's what we've been seeing a lot of. You could also go the other route and say, Denvoxner, you can have a kill lane now. Potentially like the Nautilus, Kalista or something like this. I'm not too sure. But Nautilus is pretty good into Zeri. I'm a bit curious as to why they'd actually leave the Zeri open, because the Twitch, the general, it might be the Aphelios Nautilus instead. This is a common answer into the Zeri. There it is.
They played this bot lane countless times. Nautilus was the 9th game, so this is going to be the 10th game of Nautilus on stand. So far, he has a pretty good win rate as we get another hover for the trouble. And by the way, on an interview, it was Torok and FGG saying that Katarina and Pantheon should be removed from the game. So Jarvan finally getting picked into this one. We talked about the Jarvan, so we finally get some lights on this
so
one.
You do get to see the Jarvan here. An interesting thing for me here, XL here, is you saw in the first game, they were kind of, it feels as if maybe they're pinched to locking in early mid for Morozku because of the slightly limited champion pool. But one of the things that's happened is because you've had the duo bot lane or locked in for the enemy team, you're almost pressured in some way to kind of offer up a partner for the Zeri in terms of you don't want the champion pool to get pinched in the second ban phase. So now what's going to happen, because you've locked that support, you'd imagine they are going to take away some of those support bans. With so many supports already taken off the table, with the Renata, with the Rel, with the Yumi as well, I feel as if you're going to have to, you get rid of some of Morozku's mid lane champions.
I was looking into this Gnar, and I know you don't like the Gnar as much as you did back in the day.
I was actually mistaken. It is actually 12.13, so I do like the Gnar right now.
So you like him right now. But by the way, when you have the Jarvan versus a Gnar, you're setting yourself up as the Jarvan. If you put a good Cataclysm in the middle of the fight, that's a perfect ultimate for the Gnar.
Exactly. It's really curious that they'd actually lock in Jarvan. I guess they really want that early game jungler, but he actually hasn't received his buffs yet on 12.14. So I do wonder what they're going to answer the Gnar with. They might just run it back with the Jax because he actually did really well, but I also wonder what they're going to answer the Jarvan with, right? Something that I really wanted to bring up is that recently, Dusty have actually solidified themselves as a scaling team, which is really bizarre. So maybe they take a scaling pick in the jungle. I don't think they take Graves because they have a lot of auto attackers that way. Maybe some farming junglers, potentially Fiddlesticks, Karthus, something like this. But other than that, I'm not too sure where they go with this.
Well, they heard you and they're gonna take that away. So Yasuo is no longer available, although Diana could be the pick into the jungle. We've seen that Bami's seen that Diana, which is
cool. That's a good.
Well, that's a straight up. So it's cool. Tell me about it.
Well, I mean, Karthus, like you're saying here, you talked about these AP junglers that can clear really quickly. It's going to be a champion here. It means that you want to play necessarily lanes that function themselves. You want to just allow the Karthus to accelerate the game, further full clear. We saw in the first game at a certain point, it became more than a Flame Horizon. It was a ×2 CS lead at a certain point. I believe Elise having about 150 CS. Linker's got himself 300 CS or so. This, to me, you talk about game 1 to game 2, indicates a real difference in how these teams want to play. Dan needs to play and outsource pressure and play for the lanes. We spoke about this top of the day, how he's locked into a binary function in terms of the new mid laner. He has to play utility. He can't default back to his Hekrims, his Shyvanas. He has to be playing things like the Volibear, the Jarvan. Linkus, farm. His lanes will play themselves, and he'll play for a lead himself.
It's just the big giveaway is just how they've been playing this over and over again with the Graves and now with the Karthus. It's definitely their new identity for some reason. Maybe they've come together as a team and agreed with this. I actually really like the Ahri pick here. This facilitates more diving topside. And on the flip side, XL have clearly solidified themselves as a topside team. Play for Kryze. He's going to continuously jump on the Gnar again. They're going to have one of the best roamers in Ahri shove the wave and roam up and dive top with the Rakan on the Jarvan.
Let's see what the final pick is going to be for Backlund into that Ahri matchup. But I think it cements a point that we've been talking about today, how the change of XL's bot lane. In terms of the Morozku being in the team, it means that Venza needs to be playing these more net neutral champions that will just play and contest the priority so that FGG can play more towards the mid lane, more towards the top side. And we saw that in game 1, but the problem is if that top side doesn't get off the plays and you can't enable Kryze on an individual basis is having his way with Kerberos in this series so far. If that can continue to be the case and they can continue to move pressure towards the top side, this could be the breaking point for Dusty. This could be the breaking point for JDXL to find a way into the series.
Second game of the series is I'm going to give you the question yet again. Give me those predictions. The chat brought in a little bit more percentage for JDXL. What about you, Aragon?
See, the thing is, once again, I like the comp from JDXL, but I don't trust in them to execute it. I'm going to go with Dusty again.
Dusty again. Okay, don't shake. You're falling behind.
Give me a chance after midnight. I'm all in. I'm all in on XL, man. I'm hype trained. Come on, we can do it. They've got to play through top. They're not going to mess it up twice, surely. Opium.
You know that, yeah, the Caster's curse is real. The curse for JDXL so far is real as well. As we toss it to the Caster for the second game of playoffs between the first one and the second one, JDXL versus Dusty. Take it away, Initialize. Talk to me.
Wasn't subtle, Don Jake. The biggest caster curse ever. Like, surely they can't fail it twice. That is going to come back and haunt you. And your prediction at this point. Just saying,
talking
from
about
one person to another.
a 6-game losing streak, by the way. Surely won't happen again.
Yeah, well, we'll see, because in fairness, they have set up to make this happen. Like, on paper, surely it can't happen again. I kind of agree. And honestly, as we head on to the Rift here for our second game of this best of series, it's another spicy jungle matchup. Jarvan versus Karthus. Wukong and Viego nowhere to be seen.
No, Wukong's not there. Not Trundos and Roppies more than anything.
What's going on?
STR junglers out the window. Although, talking about STR junglers, Jarvan had a resurgence again over in the LEC. He was banned quite a lot. He was picked quite a lot. Youngest player again. But that was 12.14.
Sure.
It was when he's double buffed, let's say. Right now, he does have the buff on the E still. It's a shorter cooldown, which means you can get the double buff on the what is it? It's a flag. Thank you.
Flag. There you go.
Double cooldown. Double
right,
buff
like double
on
buff?
The,
What?
On the flag if you have it leveled up,
Got
right?
you. Yep. So I think he steals both red and blue buff, and he's like, no, you mean it's in the buff on the flag, not the
Yes.
jungler brain goes buff equals red or blue. I will say, quick note to anybody who's not seen Karthus recently, was played by Canyon in a win over Gen G of all teams right now, who are pretty much inarguably the best team in Korea alongside T1, but of course, recent form suggests Gen G definitely looking better. And Canyon was playing into a similar kind of matchup, and the idea is you win by avoiding Jarvan, and you win this matchup basically by farming so hard he can do nothing about it.
Now, here's my question here, because seeing how last game went, Roscoe here is playing pre-6, the melee versus ranged matchup into the Yone. And Kryze has, historically speaking, clapped Kerberos with his Jax in this particular matchup, especially in game number 1. So, thank you very much for that as well. So, seeing as tops of the map should have priority for Dan, we're looking to see if he's going to be invading that Karthus. Now, talking about Kryze, of course, in wins versus in losses, you see a huge difference. His damage, though, stays very close, which means that even if you put down this guy in laning phase, he will find a way to turn this around. Now, of course, if you manage to put him ahead, he will most likely give you a lot more. Now, talking about invading and talking about a lot of the priority, Kryze pushing top. You see Roscoe has a small push in the mid as well. They're gonna spot the Karthus right here. I'm thinking that rather than trying to get into Karthus' jungle and stop him, focus on getting Kryze ahead again.
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. Look, this is a guy who you can definitely use as a litmus test, right? To see whether he, like when XL winning, you can see it in the numbers. You can see how he's working. We're going to see this early gank here from Dan. This is what we need to see. We need to see it work as both top laners taken down to low HP points and Karthus is pathing away. Kerberos needs to be afraid now. Mininar's come through that he was got to be aware of that potential gank as bot side trades begin. Not too much more going to come out of it though, when Dan not going to see anything around the Krugs. Will know that Karthus started up there and nothing really happens.
I'm a little bit concerned on the fact that these camps are being pinged, because if I'm the Karthus right here, and if I'm Linkas, I want to avoid playing on the same side quadrant as this Jarvan, especially since Ari has prio, especially since Kryze has prio. I want to get out of dodge from top lane. But right here, Dan in the mid lane looking for
Flash, flag, and drag will not quite make it work due to a good soul unbound. Now Linkas is here. Will throw down the lay wastes and the Defast do some work. Spackling has got to come back, is ignited, will surely tick down, does so. But now can the side of XL extricate themselves? Seems like they can. Topside dive doesn't happen, but the mid one does.
Okay, I started sweating a little bit right there when I saw some of the skill shots not hitting, but Buckland Massive for JDXL, loses his flash, loses his teleport, ends up going down. And Roscoe, the only AP profile damage dealer in the team, getting that early kill onto the Ari, getting very close to that lost chapter, which will allow you to permanently shove in that mid lane is going to be huge. Now, talking about shoving in that mid lane and the Ari versus Yone matchup, a lot of the times in bigger leagues, what we see a lot of the Yones do is they trade their ultimate to take Ari's ultimate away. And once Ari doesn't have her ultimate nor flash, it's really difficult for her to team fight. Talking about flashes and shenanigans, mid lane.
Yeah, mid lane looks like we might have as much as Linkas looking bot, so at the same time means that's not going to happen. All the while, Backland has had to get out of there, but gets a flash charm into him, and it will be a second death for Backland here. Surely no way out. Rojku now 2-0 on this Ari.
Meanwhile, Venzer level 3.
Oh, Venzer at level 3. FGG gets the kill. Venzer healing up best he can. It will be a 1-for-1 in the end as Venzer does fall, but at least trades back with 1.
It is a 1-for-1, and there's 3 members of Dash towards the bot side of the map. So usually when you're diving, if there's an extra member and you lose and trade 1-for-1, it is in favor of the opponent team. But right here, Venzer is losing a bunch of the CS and experience underneath his tower. And unfortunately for him, he was not the one banking in on that kill either. It was FG that ended up getting the kill with that ignite. And as we'll see this again, dive bot lane, they see Venzer level 3. They're rubbing their hands right there. They're like, the legends must be
It's true.
They're going to pop down the slow from the Karthus as well, and then it's really easy to play around that because the slow stays up for quite a while, and Venzer only had this wall to play around, which means he was getting permanently slowed. His magic resist was lowered as well, so he ended up going down.
Credit, of course, due to over to the side of FGG and the likes for managing to trade that back onto Sten, but you're right, it's still the fact that Venzer dies, and it's going to be another tempted play as Venzer has to flash the dredge line. Now down another summoner. FGG is back. Dusty doing their very best to make sure Venzer's Zeri is punishable, but Dan is right back in mid lane. He's got 2 kills here already with the Soul Unbound used. Got to be so afraid, but Linkas now coming over makes this one a difficult one to secure anything more on.
So the difference between, as FCG here is going to get caught, but he's going to be able to dash away. The difference between a Sivir, of course, and the Zeri is that unless you're playing very close to a wall with Zeri and you're able to skip, hop, and jump away. Thank you very much.
I still do want to go like a hip hop, a hippity.
It's very easy. You see the anchor coming your way, you pop your spell shield, you get out of dodge. Zeri cannot necessarily do the same. So the second Venzer overextends and Sten is in lane, he can actually look for these hooks. And what that does is that it forces FGG to stick down in the bot lane, protect Venzer when the wave is in a state where Venzer can get dived until his flash is back up and available. So even though in the first game we saw the FGG roam a lot, the way Sten and Voxne have played the lane,
makes that so much.
Get these flashes, to get these dives down the bot side of the map, makes it very difficult for FGG to leave the side of Venzer.
Absolutely does, and of course, see whether that continues to be the case, because Dan and Rojku, on the other hand, have been very active. So while you've lost one of your roaming parts, this Jarvan has been all over the place and has been significantly more successful than they were on the Elise. Curb flashes, hops afterwards, and does get out, but does have to burn the summoner.
So far, this challenge has to be working much better than the Elise. Has gotten the flash in the top lane, flash plus kill in the mid lane, another kill in the mid lane with a flashless backland, and now I guess Dan has to be looking at the top lane yet again. The second Minina hits onto Kerberos. Backland, still there's a small window where that flash is not back up and available for Yone. Yone much more difficult to pin down, of course, due to the ultimate. But if Moscow gets a nice trade, grabs the ultimate away from Backland, you could see an opportunity right there where both junglers will be looking. Talking about junglers, Arthas is on that level 6.
Oh, yes.
Trade. So if you get a very bad trade, all Linkas has to do is press the magic R button and collect the kill.
Absolutely, and there's definitely worlds here as well where you end up seeing the economy ultimates from Garth. It's like, it's 3 minutes until a dragon. I can press R and it'll be back on cooldown.
And get the first item real quickly.
So let me go. This is what I need to bank. It's like it's the bank of Karthus going. I press R, steal some gold, come back. This is great. Hasn't decided to do that, of course, as yet, but can start using that and has definitely built raw AP right now. Nothing like boots to take away from the AP numbers right yet. And of course, as this game goes on, we saw what happened last game when the Graves managed to get increasingly ahead of the Elise. See whether Linkas can continue to use those kind of strategies against Dan, who has gone towards these more aggressive early playmaking options.
And I really like the fact that you mentioned that he's gone for pure, raw ability power, no boots, no nothing. Linkas cares more about pressing his R button and banking in as much gold as possible for the first strike. The more damage you do, the more you get to bank in. So really good stuff right there from Linkas, who so far even though he showed us a lot of proactive junglers during the regular season, I have to say, here he's following more of the AFK, we're chilling, we're farming, we're outscaling, we'll play the Dusty team fighting game that we know we can play the best. Because we have mentioned many times, I think Bifrost did it as well themselves, if we find our best game, no one can beat us in it. FTG and Venz are under fire in the bottle, and remember, Venz's flash still not up and available, so Dusty will deprive him yet again of experience and gold, which is something that they've consistently done throughout these 2 games that we've seen.
Eyes on the top side of the river, though. As you can see, Dan has started up the Herald. No real contest from Dusty. They take the plates in the bot side as trade, but even down the river, you can see a lot of control wards in there for JDXL. There were a couple wards over walls from Dusty to have an idea of what's going on. It's how they knew that Herald was happening, but JDXL certainly trying to make the most of these early power spikes, and now with a dive opportunity, Curb really wants to hit Meganar very soon.
He might have it just in time.
Ooh, another turnaround. Fly's got to flash away. The caster is going to come through. Ultimate down survives, though. No way. He left it because he thought he was going to get the kill onto Karthus.
Buy your HP items, people, because it works against AP champions very early on. That Kindle gem right there saved Cry's life. That roam and that dive was very dangerous because Kerberos was just hitting Meganar. You'll see that Kerberos here focuses maliciously on trying to get that rage bar to full to transform into Meganar. You get extra combat stats from it, which means he forces Cry's flash, but he doesn't get the Meganar down.
Yeah, seriously, he was going to leave that, try and stun down and get the kill onto Christ at the same time. He gets neither, he dies. That is so frustrating, and just a slight miscalculation. Honestly, that dive did not go well. It shouldn't have worked out, but a little bit of a fumble at the end of it there from Kerberos and crew, and you end up in a situation where another kill goes the way of JDXL.
Now, of course, with Venza having his flash up and available, I'd like to see FTG on the run again. I'd like to see him roam the same way as Stent has been doing. Now that Voxne on that Aphelios has the mobility with the boots, he has his flash available. You've seen Stent go all over the map, whilst keeping the bot side of the map always lit up in words, especially since Voxne has stayed alone down the bot lane for so long, making sure that their AD carry cannot get dived. And with any chance they get, these chickens have been gone every single time in both of these games. Oh.
Another attempt there, of course, a little bit harder to lock down the Yone post the level 6 we mentioned, because yes, he might pop back to his original point, but he's then got an ultimate to try and escape, and not gonna find it this time around.
Oh,
all the while, though, Venza will get pulled out of that lightning rush, nowhere to go. Spark surges way into a grave. Nice hook there from Sten, who uses the flash very aggressively.
And the Riffle is going to be popped into that mid lane. JDXL are trying to make a trade for the AD carry, but in 3 seconds, there's also that dragon that's going to be spawning. First dragon has gone to dust his way. Linkas is around, but Moscow is threatening with the entirety of that mid lane tower. He's going to put down some poke onto Buckland as well, and JDXL are the first ones towards that dragon. They're going to secure themselves a dragon, but very crucially right there, Venza with full flash, and he'll get caught, unfortunately, by Sten's anchor. And Dusty managed to get 1 kill onto that Aphelios.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure whether Venza's flash was just on cooldown at that point, but whether if it was, it sounds like it was off, and as a result, he still doesn't use either of them, does go down, and yeah, falls down there. Pretty frustrating, of course. XL still pretty happy in this game. Got themselves 1,000 or so gold lead, but you start to see this Yone, this Aphelios with some items. The Karthus keeps farming up, and things might get trickier for JDXL, but right now, feeling pretty happy with themselves.
And I'd say here you have a lot more late-game shenanigans as well, with the Jarvan locking people up, reaching the backline towards Karthus and Aphelios, for example. Kerberos right here will have the chance to get away, but having the Jarvan right there, having the Ahri, having all these late-game champions that can actually make a pick into the backline makes a lot more sense.
But Sten still continuing to be a bit of a nightmare here for Venza, stealing away as many of these Crux as he can. Does get a few of those and takes them away from Venza. Like, I did all the hard work here. This is very rude of you. And then Vox is going to take another plate down towards his bot side. In fact, might even look for all of them here. Of course, no one else around really to add on those additional Bastion resists as the first plate falls, but will for now stand on about a couple hundred HP for, in this bot side.
My question here is, in the previous game it was pretty much, does Buckland get to delete the backline of XL, or is it going to be Cries on the Jax that deletes the backline of Dusty first? The backline of Dusty. Not
Sure, yeah. The backland of Dusty, yes.
So the answer right there was Buckland on that Akali was absolutely huge, and he managed to delete everyone. Now, right here, where you see the money distribution has gone for both teams. One set for Dusty, has gone down to the Voxne. Same story, 2 different games. All the tower platings down bot, almost the tower as well. This time it's Morosku with the majority of the gold lead into his own hands on that Ahri. Has that Everfrost locked in, and I think he's one of the rookies that we just got to know in our league. He's in his rookie year, but right now putting the resources on him, giving the money to this guy, who's given us a new pick to look at.
Yeah, and back again in the mid lane is another attempt at the tower dive. Flash from back, and then ult afterwards. Flash for flash, but it will leave this tower out to dry. And Morosku and Dan put as much pressure on the backline as they possibly can. So many attempts there, half of them successful. Has left this this star mid laner from Dusty down a few of his usual tricks.
And I'd say a little bit of a head scratcher, and why I mentioned also Linkas falling back to this farming AFK champions in the jungle was the dynamic duo we had always seen from Dusty, the mid-jungle duos, the Yasuos and Dianas, the Yasuos with Talias. The champions that link very well together, and they roam them up and they end the game so quickly that the damage per minute doesn't get to skyrocket because they just choke everyone in the early game. And right now I feel like Linkas falling back to something that scales more into the late game has allowed Buckland a few instances where he could get punished, and so far mid-jungle duo from JDXL, at least in this game, have been seen to link up much better together to try and shut down the threat that killed them in the previous game.
Of course, still a very even game gold-wise, and 1 dragon apiece as well means that, yes, you managed to get some things rolling, but if this Karthus can keep farming up, if this Aphelios and Yone aren't put that far behind, things still get pretty tricky as top lane tower put under siege. Dan hooked up, but not taking aggro quite yet. Charmed up now with the quickness. Mustengo's golden, as does Link, as double stopwatch pop. Roscu has used the ultimate as well, though. For now, the dive is thwarted, but it comes at the cost of those very important items. Stopwatch is down as the Herald is spawned.
Very crucially though, you burnt Linkas' flash, which means he gets hit by a flag and drag, a cataclysm, a charm from the Ahri. He goes down really quickly, although killing a Karthus, we all know, doesn't achieve much because he deals a bunch of damage in the afterlife.
From Morosku over the wall, just out of range of the charm and the Orb of Deception though, so Herald's still gonna be over to Dusty, who earn enough out of JDXL to secure that Herald in their inventory. Teleport now towards the bot side from Kerberos, and Venza won't be able to get too much done on the top of that tower.
Yeah, and Venza also needs to be extremely careful right there because he doesn't have a tower behind him, and Kerberos can actually run him down. On the flip side, that Drift Herald that Dusty went for has actually netted them yet another tower, yet more gold towards that Aphelios, who has the Gale Force, goes towards that second item pretty quickly. And if we can see a little bit of difference in gold between the AD carries, both had scaling into that late game, you see that then Voxen is almost 2,000 gold up. That puts, of course, a lot of pressure onto Den Vox's Aphelios, having to play into an Ahri, Jarvan, and Jax combo.
Of course, last game we saw not the easiest game for Den Voxne. Got punished a few times with 0-4-4 while the rest of his map was doing very well, but did have a lot of members jumping at him and trying to make his life very, very difficult. A little bit easier perhaps this game, with the exception, of course, of the Jarvan being very, very obnoxious, but need to see whether Den Voxne can have a more stable game here as the Dragon being started up. And JDXL are teleporting in, they want to fight this.
Yeah, Crysis deeping literally in the face of Dusty. There is no flash for Linkas.
Nowhere to go. Now down into his passive. The Fear Beyond Death coming through will now pop the Requiem. Morosku looking for a flank. Not the biggest ult ever, but does chunk out some people. Big turnaround, though. But the what about back into the backside, charmed out of his ultimate. Big gnar onto the wall, though, on the other side means this is still an even trade. 3 for 3 is the fight right now. Venza slowed down by a boulder toss. Then Voxne Gale forcing forwards. Gets a flash heal out of Venza. And JDXL have to retreat.
They have to retreat. They lost the jungler, and so did Dusty. I feel like JDXL right there left way too much room for Dusty to move forward, especially after they lost their jungler. And Morosku is still lurking, still looking. Venza's gonna push mid lane, but at the end of the day, it is Dusty. They get their 2 kills, and they also get their second dragon of the game. And let's look at this again. We mentioned Linkas. He burned his flash on the top side of the map. He missteps slightly right there, gets instantly punished. And Morosku had an opening, he had a flank right there, takes it a little bit too late, and has to use one of his dashes to actually get over the wall. The second one right there is not going to net him a reset. And once Crysis goes all the way into the backline, then Voxne has more than the best guns that he could have had to get rid of any melee threats, the white and the red.
Yeah, Yeah, and that means a lot of flashes burned for JDXL now as well. Dan and FGG, the only ones with them right now. Of course, Vox, they had to burn his to get out of the Cataclysm. And that could be critical if another fight was to break out anytime soon, of course. Assuming he can stay safe, we'll likely have that up for the next big objective fight. The mid lane tower now to see just Dan looks for a potential angle.
Yeah, and if you look at that, Christ towards the bot side of the map, doesn't have the flash available, could take a lot of hurt. But what really is important here is that Roscoe, top side of the map with Ignite, no teleport. He's actually going to be perma-pushing, and JDXL are going to lose their mid lane tower in trade of a top lane tower. Not really worth, but considering that Roscoe is the guy with the most money right now on the side of JDXL, you definitely want to be playing towards his side of the map. So using him as side lane pressure, maybe trying to lurk someone over to try and clear the wave and then punish him. But I think this is going to be a story of who can carry the hardest right here. Can Roscoe actually snowball his lead with that Ari, find the backline access? Else then Voxne is just going to be clearing out place.
And, you know, not to take on the role of Nightmare too much, but this is a very utility, safety-focused build from the RS. It's not building to really snowball damage here. This is Everfrost into Zonies. Has now got a needlessly large rod, which is likely going towards something like a... Shadow Flame, likely. I mean, we have seen the occasional Horizon focus, but I kind of agree, and that is perhaps my one concern here. Roscoe, with a lot of the gold, needs to get the damage down. Backlund, though, getting stunned up. Doesn't have a lot of room to go here. We'll have to use the Fate Seal well. Gets out best for now, but it's only got a flash. Nowhere really to go. Christ takes a lot of damage. Tower shots come through. Another one afterwards, and the Requiem! With the burn. Will the burn get him? It's not going to be quite enough. 21 HP! 1 HP he ticked down to.
Seeing this happen, I was looking at the other side of the map because I'm like, you have an Aphelios, you have a Karthus, you can burn down this Baron so quickly with these two picks. But on the other hand, Dusty are going to put the pressure in the middle, and they're going to put the pressure onto the top side of the map. Roscoe's looking for Kerberos.
Prize is clearly not a music fan, survives with such little HP, ignores the Requiem coming out of Karthus, but now Kerberos, as you said, taken pretty low. FGG pops the quickness. Stent gonna try and trade this one out. Now flashing back. Moonlight Vigil splashes over a couple, but not too much more. Depth charge burned as well. Is there a teleport option for Cries? Not really. So Dusty will be able to extricate themselves, but they do get the tier 2 in this top lane.
Yeah, and honestly, again, JDXL are going to trade a Q, a tower, and Dusty instantly reply with a tower. This series is closer than we thought it would have been. You saw it from people voting in the first game as well. They thought it was a 20-80, then they thought it was a 45-55. Right here, XL are putting up a pretty even fight versus Dusty. Dusty, a team that is on a 10-0, 11-0 win streak right here if we count their playoff series. And we're looking at these late game team fights that Dusty is so known for. And the longer the clock ticks, we're getting a little bit worried for JDXL and how they're going to fight, because Ari's really good at picking people off, but it's not necessarily the best front-to-back team fighter there is.
Dan gets hooked as he was looking for an engaged in Vox. He's still no flash, needs to be afraid, but XL have to run back. Now Dan Zekazolo has to flash out of the Fate Seal, has a blast cone out. Kerberos looking for the Mega Null, gets a big chunk of Defender who's down to half HP. And with Baron alive but no Dragon, I think Dusty can just turn and look to burn it.
XL are looking for picks right there. Your money is in Roscoe. Roscoe was taking the blue buff over on the top side of the map. Dan loses his flash, loses his HP bar. Benza, very low HP bars as well.
Well, we've talked about Requiems. They're going to talk about a Crescendum instead. The rising damage coming through. Backlund steps forward, gets as much damage as one. But the turnaround! FGG sets up for the mother of all cataclysms. And Dusty melt away like dew in the morning sun. Cries will get another. A Requiem comes down, but there's nothing to be found. Baron to JDXL.
Initialize, I'm getting deja vu, because exactly at these minutes, JDXL aced Dusty in game number 1, and then they proceeded to throw it all away. So JDXL fans, get excited because it was a fantastic team fight, but now JDXL need to replicate. There were no flashes right there for Den Voxne, and you can ban the rel off you want, all you want. FGG shines on a lot more engaged champions, getting that 3-man knockout into a 4-man cataclysm, into Venzer hitting people unbothered in the backline. That was a near flawless teamfight engage right there from JDXL, showing also their prowess right now, and also giving a lot of hope for this best of series. Now having the Baron, you can use this on your Jax to create pressure and move as a 4-man unit on the map, trying to find these picks with the Javan, with the Ari.
Critical win there for JDXL. They also get to take a hold of this Dragon. You can see Dan's on it right now. Dusty need to weather the storm here. Mrozq dodge away from the house being thrown by this dinosaur-sized Gnar. And as it stands, it's only 4 kills that Dusty picked up the entire game. Yes, they managed to stay close in gold. Yes, they scaled just fine, but this push could be catastrophic for them.
And what XL did was really clever. They had Venzer push all the way from base that wave, and Kryze was cutting off the new waves that were coming in under this tier 2 tower. Mrozq, again, they're using him as pressure in the mid lane, but he's the only guy that doesn't have an easy way to actually join them. No teleports, no easy ways. Those are both sides of the map. But making sure that you're using this Baron to put pressure on 2 lanes creates this dynamic for Dusty where they need to defend, because Aphelios cannot get close enough with the right guns, doesn't have the Infernum. Your mid laner is a melee, so he's gonna walk very close to that wave and you might be able to punish. And also you have Gnar and Karthus who are also very short range. So right now, Dusty, it's better if they do stick together as a unit to try and fend off these waves versus XL.
Doing their best to do exactly that, but they've already claimed the tier 2 in mid lane. Tier 2 in the bot lane, though, still at about half HP. About 1 minute left on the Baron power play, though, so can still make some damage come through with another wave or 2 coming through. Dusty doing their very best to make sure this isn't an easy take.
And JDXL are taking it really slow right here. Nobody's powering up that mid lane wave that just crashed, so Buckland is going to take that, say thank you very much. It's going to be really quick for him. Real quickly, while this siege is happening, and Kryze is falling
very low. Big Moonlight Vigil afterwards. There's a charm of Zenvoxne, but it's already a dead Jax. Making it 2 as Zenvoxne. Running round from Mrozq's had to go golden, but got nowhere to go. Will try and get out with a flash and an ultimate and does so for now. It is still a 2-for-1, but watch out for the Requiem. You are absolutely right. Still yet to charge it, yet to pop it off. Where is the ultimate? There it is. Requiem comes down and the song will not quite lead to anyone's demise. Everyone stays out of the grave for now.
But again, it was an ace into a Baron, into a throne fight for JDXL. We're getting deja vu from game number 1. Kryze tanks everything in the kitchen sink in this fight, and no one takes the tower. Kryze ends up going down to the tower, and Buckland, yet again, he's been such a nuisance in the backline of JDXL, whilst Mrozq and Dan cannot necessarily reach the backline too well, especially since Kryze is dead. So I feel like a mistake, an overstep right there from Kryze on that Jax cost JDXL this particular team fight, and now they need to rinse and repeat. They need to figure out again how to get this near flawless team fight that they had around the Baron area. 2.5 minutes for Dragon, 2.5 minutes for Baron.
Of course, eyes on Zenvoxne's flash. It's down. That might make that a little easier. And of course, FGG has been honestly pretty phenomenal at finding the engagements, and Dan has done a pretty good job at following up on them. We've seen it work. We know it can happen. Problem is, if you don't quite get it right, suddenly Aphelios gets to stand and deliver. We know what he can do with the right weapons. Backlund then has everyone grouped up to try and ult everyone. Kerberos with the Cataclysm Walls can turn it around. You need to hit those engages properly, or it is lights out.
And honestly, they need to have the 3-man call on the top side of the map, dive in the backline of Dusty, Kryze on the Jack, Stan on the Java, and Ari for Mrozq. These are the 3 tappers that are extremely mobile. They can reach that backline, can cause havoc. Reach the Karthus, reach the Vox, and like you mentioned, without flashing the backline, take them down. Or if you do get to stand still backline, he's gonna dive in the backline.
Yes.
Backline who's not had one of the best games right here.
No.
He's
had a rough one.
2. The mid jungle duo from JDXL have made sure to shut him down on this particular champion very well. And the rookie right here, Mrozq, is making so much happen on the map. 405, 650 gold bounty. XL looking for that team fight, they're looking for that pick.
Absolutely. Brief palate cleanser before we hit what will be a big objective.
Okay, I like that.
And we'll come in with what's hoping is, alas, no tweets. No! The traffic lied to me. There are no tweets.
No palate cleanse, okay.
I tried to palate cleanse.
Back. So
alas.
Here's the win con. The win con right here is this Ari who's purchased her second Nidus Ladsrod, going towards that death cap, reaching the backline. Assassinating the Voxne and Linkas is the name of the game for Dusty. Because the longer this Karthus stays alive, not only does he get to put damage down while he's dead, if he stays alive for longer, he gets to put down that much more damage. And then as the fight goes on, the ultimate can take away all these people from JDXL trying to run away with very low health bars. Now, the Dragon's gonna be coming up. 30 seconds for Baron as well. It's gonna be so points for both of these teams, but it seems like they're both willing and eager to fight for this. Dusty, really lovely, pushing that mid lane wave, trying to get control of the jungle first. There are 2 wards that are behind them, but I'm assuming
Voxne, that was his stopwatch. He just burned his stopwatch.
He got pinged. They saw him on
That's
the
a
wall.
massive, massive blow, Den Voxner. You cannot make mistakes like that. He is a champion of the NLC, back on Tricked. We know he's got what it takes, but you cannot be making errors like that, especially from someone who is a veteran in the squad. Cries on a flank, looking for an angle, and Den Voxner is hatching a ward. They know exactly where he is. Need to be afraid. Voxner still stay alive, but that will be a big flash down around the charm! It's huge! But what about Moroscu? He's going to go on the backside, Cries to the backside, and Benta will make short work of everybody else. It's a complete wipe! And JDXL surely could just walk on in and end the damn game.
From 20% chances from the viewers to 45% chances from the viewers to winning against Dusty in a very decisive manner. 3-1 and 13 for Jungle. 6-0-7, the first game that we've seen Moroscu sign. And JDXL are going to equalize here.
Moroscu has the game of his split here in the NLC, and it will help lead JDXL to a score here. 1-1, they tie up the series.
I don't think, with JDXL coming off a 0-5 losing streak, Dusty coming in from a 10-0 win streak, we did not expect this to be that competitive because even game one was very, very competitive. All it took was a change in the jungle, the Jarvan instead of the Elise. You have that early game prowess, but you also have these late game engages that are much more consistent, I'd like to say. And honestly, the only thing that I'm really happy that this series is going that far forward is that no matter that both of these teams are fighting for a main stage or playing stage, they're both locked in for EU Masters. What Aragon said on the desk, it's about how strong the teams that we're sending to EU Masters are, and if there is too much of a discrepancy between them. And so far, these teams are going head to head.
They absolutely are. We asked for competition. We also asked Dusty to clean it up a little bit, and they honestly got wiped here. Over to the desk we go.
Thank you so much, Initializing Travel. It seems my lunch is still in bed. Travel, I'm on to you. 3 lunches in a row. I'm eating for free. By the way, I just want to highlight this. Twitch chat, you know something we don't. They are ahead of the curve.
And the faithful shall be rewarded, you know, Initialize, he was trying to trample on my dreams, but he said it was gonna come back to haunt me, but I'm a dreamer right now, and I'm living in absolute dreamland. XL, the faithful.
It's tied up.
Prophet of light is here.
It's tied up between you two. Okay, let's break this down. Let's understand how did this happen. For the first time in 6 games, JDXL won. 11 games, Dusty finally lost. Let's break down the early game. How did the lead appear in first place?
So, for all the flack I gave him in the last post-game, I actually want to give massive props to Dan, right? I don't know what it was. Maybe it was jitters of first time into the, first game of the best of 5. But suddenly, he's taking these risks, early game where he could have in the least game but didn't. And now he's actually committing. He's actually going through with the dives in the middle of mid-turrets, and then re-ganking, constantly getting these leads in these early game comps. So yeah, massive props to Dan.
But ironically, if we head into the second replay here, I have to kind of be a little bit cognizant of the fact there is a limitation in what's occurring in the series for me. I feel like I will sing the praises until the cows go home of XL, but they're not doing enough. And really, this is something that highlights. I want to talk about this ward here on the Raptor camp, if you look at the mini-map right now. Karthus is clearing in a binary quadrant, whereby you always know where he's going to be. They do a really good job of tracking him, but unfortunately, Moroscu, because of the fact he has this massive lead now, is going to generate prio. I would have really liked for Dan to buck trend in terms of pathing here, interrupt the clear that you know is going to be occurring. You accounted for it previously, minutes in advance. Set up a play. We talked about on the Telestrator how Dusty can set up plays in advance. Move FGG to that mid-wave, play with the mid-wave priority, get level 6 on FGG in the way that we've seen him do so many times throughout this split, then play for the Herald. And I think the game plays out very similarly where you get that dive off anyway. I feel like XL need to excel in the ability to play around these higher order concepts on the map, set up plays in advance. It will do you a lot of favors in the long run, and it would have been a way of them blowing this game open even more.
Should we highlight the top planet as well? Cries with the Jax. I know you really like Jax as a champion. I know you love him, but it's working wonders.
That's sarcasm, by the way. Jax is my go-to permaman in solo queue. Anyway, yeah, I think it's working wonders for Kryze. Kryze clearly has mastered this 1v1. He keeps coming out on top, forcing Kerberos to recall early game. He's done that 2 games in a row now, where he is forced Kerberos to recall, then TP back to lane, and then if Kerberos has anything happen to him, he doesn't have TP, right? I think you stop handshaking this matchup. If you are Kerberos, clearly, on top of that, I want to bring up what's going on with Kerberos. I wanted to ask that. I don't think he's having a great series. I don't know what's going on. Usually, I'm all for his gameplay. I really like Kerberos. I think he's a great player. But for some reason, just individually, you saw in one of the ganks topside with the dive, he's just whiffing spells. He's flashing and taking really weird engages. I want to see better gameplay individually out of him.
It's the Phantom W, right? That W that no one knows where it went. Probably Howling Abyss or something like that. Probably like your earphone just popped off.
It hit me in the green room, that W, actually.
By the way, we need to look into the last replay for this one, because for the first time, I can say JDXL played as a team.
Yeah, so from this point onwards, is sort of, this game is dead even. You know, JDXL have found some birth. They're not quite extending their lead, but this is a point 5-on-5. Look at it. This is the Jarvan going in. Kryze is able to get access to the backline. Morozku, we have to kind of give him a shout out, because although I feel like the team play wasn't accelerating, him individually, he's picked up his first win now in the NLC with this team on quite a stellar individual performance. I know he's got a lot of fans. He's a young player. There's a lot of people from the previous split in the Ultra League that are watching right now on the Twitch chat, cheering him on. I'm so glad that they got the chance to have a game whereby they're going to see Morozku performing to this high-octane gameplay that we know he can achieve.
Eragon, I'm going to slap you with a question right now. Looking into both teams at the beginning of the day, obviously you would give like 80, 90% to Dusty and 10 for JDXL if they were lucky. What about now? Be honest with me.
Yeah, I actually think it's 55-45 to JDXL, because they're actually just beating Dusty at their own game. Like, when was the last time you saw Dusty get out team for out skirmished? It just doesn't happen, right? And it keeps happening in this series. It's really bizarre.
We set up that Dusty could be the team that would be more scary on the best